Chapter 44: A Test of Loyalties. The relentless march of time had thrust Mara and Cale into a precarious juncture where their loyalties faced unprecedented scrutiny. The new threat, emerging with ruthless precision, loomed over them like a dark cloud, threatening not only the fragile peace they had painstakingly established but also casting a deep shadow over the very foundation of their alliance. Each day brought with it fresh revelations and escalating tension, compounding the urgency of their situation and placing their commitment to each other under intense pressure. In the midst of this growing crisis, Mara found herself grappling with an overwhelming sense of responsibility. Her dedication to preserving the hard-won stability of their kingdoms drove her to take decisive, immediate action. Every fiber of her being was focused on quelling the rising tide of fear and unrest among the populace, seeking to prevent panic from unraveling their efforts. Yet, the relentless demands of this new threat were stretching her thin, leaving her feeling isolated in her struggle to maintain order. Cale, on the other hand, approached the situation with his characteristic strategic acumen. His mind was a whirl of calculations and assessments as he worked tirelessly to analyze the broader implications of the new threat. For him, the challenge was not merely about addressing immediate concerns but also about understanding the deeper motives behind the attacks. His priority was to navigate the complex political landscape and ensure that their responses did not inadvertently worsen the situation. However, his methodical approach often clashed with Mara's more urgent and visible tactics. The friction between Mara and Cale became increasingly apparent as their differing priorities led to frequent disagreements. Mara's emphasis on swift, visible actions clashed with Cale's insistence on careful diplomacy and strategic foresight. Their debates, once constructive, began to devolve into heated arguments as the stakes of their situation became ever more critical. Each felt that the other's approach jeopardized their collective efforts, and the strain on their relationship was palpable. Elara, ever the insightful observer, watched with growing concern as the discord between Mara and Cale threatened to undermine their unity. Her role as a mediator had always been challenging, but the personal dynamics between the two leaders added a layer of complexity that she struggled to manage. She worked diligently to bridge the gap, offering insights and suggestions to harmonize their approaches and refocus their energies on their common goal. Yet, despite her best efforts, the underlying tension between Mara and Cale persisted, casting a shadow over their collective efforts. As the crisis unfolded, the need for unity and coherence in their leadership became increasingly apparent. Mara and Cale faced the stark reality that their personal loyalties were deeply intertwined with the fate of their kingdoms. They had to navigate the treacherous waters of their disagreement and find a way to reconcile their differences, or risk undermining everything they had worked to achieve. The test of their loyalties was not just a matter of personal commitment, but also a reflection of their ability to function as a cohesive team under immense pressure. Their ability to overcome these challenges and present a united front was crucial to their success in addressing the new threat. The tension between them served as a stark reminder of the delicate balance required in leadership, where personal loyalties and professional responsibilities often intersect in complex ways. Each leader had to confront their own fears and doubts, pushing themselves to rise above their disagreements and focus on the broader mission. In the end, the resolution of their conflict would determine the effectiveness of their response to the crisis. Mara and Cale's journey through this turbulent period was a testament to their resilience and dedication. Despite the strain on their relationship, they remained united by their shared purpose and commitment to their kingdoms. As they faced the trials of this new phase in their journey, their loyalty to each other and their mission would be tested but ultimately reaffirmed, driving them to overcome the obstacles that lay ahead. The days following the emergence of the new threat were a whirlwind of frenetic activity and palpable tension. The once optimistic atmosphere that had followed the stabilization of the alliance was now replaced by grim urgency. Mara and Cale found themselves at the forefront of this struggle, each facing the enormity of the challenge in their own way. The weight of the situation pressed heavily upon them, amplifying their individual doubts and fears. Mara, driven by her unwavering commitment to maintaining peace, was particularly troubled by the potential consequences of the new threat. Her mind was consumed with the fear that their hard-won stability might unravel before their eyes. She immersed herself in efforts to fortify the alliance, channeling her energy into diplomatic maneuvers and public reassurances. Her determination was fueled by the urgency of the crisis, even as the obstacles she faced seemed insurmountable. Her approach was characterized by an unyielding focus on immediate actions, seeking to address the crisis head-on. Mara's leadership was visible and assertive. She made it a point to project strength and stability to both her allies and the public. However, the strain of her relentless schedule and the pressure to perform weighed heavily on her, leaving her feeling isolated despite her efforts to hold the alliance together. In contrast, Cale's response to the threat was more measured and strategic. His focus was on understanding the broader implications of the crisis and ensuring that their responses did not exacerbate the situation. He delved into intelligence reports, sought insights from key advisors, and engaged in back-channel negotiations. Cale's approach was characterized by a cautious, methodical analysis aimed at preventing further destabilization. Despite his calm exterior, Cale was deeply concerned about the impact of the new threat on the political landscape. He was aware that his strategic maneuvers needed to be carefully balanced with Mara's more immediate actions. The pressure to maintain a united front while addressing the complex, evolving situation added to his internal conflict. His efforts to craft a cohesive response were often at odds with Mara's more urgent tactics. The tension between Mara and Cale became increasingly evident as their differing approaches to the crisis led to frequent clashes. Mara's insistence on quick, decisive actions conflicted with Cale's preference for strategic, long-term planning. Their debates, which once had been productive, began to strain their partnership and complicate their efforts to manage the crisis effectively. Each felt that the other's approach jeopardized their shared goals. As the days wore on, the stress of their conflicting priorities began to take its toll. The need for unity and coherence in their leadership became more critical than ever. Mara and Cale struggled to reconcile their differences, each feeling the weight of their personal responsibilities as well as their obligations to the alliance. Their ability to navigate this turbulent period would be crucial in determining the outcome of the new threat. Alara, ever perceptive to the nuances of the situation, worked tirelessly to mediate between Mara and Cale. Her role as a conciliator was essential in managing the growing discord and ensuring that their combined efforts remained focused on the broader mission. Despite her best efforts, the challenges of balancing their divergent approaches and maintaining the integrity of their leadership were formidable. In the face of this adversity, Mara and Cale's resolve was put to the ultimate test. The new threat, with its potential to unravel everything they had worked to achieve, required them to confront their own fears and doubts. As they faced the trials of this new phase in their journey, their loyalty to each other and their commitment to their kingdoms were tested but ultimately reaffirmed, driving them to overcome the obstacles and preserve the fragile peace they had fought so hard to secure. Cale approached the new threat with his characteristic strategic mindset, meticulously analyzing every aspect of the situation. His focus was on understanding the broader implications of the coordinated attacks and their potential impact on the political landscape. Unlike Mara, whose concerns were more immediate and reactive, Cale's attention was directed towards the long-term consequences of the crisis. He pored over intelligence reports, assessed the patterns in the attacks, and consulted with experts to devise a plan that would address the threat in a way that preserved the fragile alliance. His commitment to preserving the alliance was unwavering, yet his approach was fundamentally different from Mara's. Cale was determined to confront the threat head-on, but he believed that doing so required a careful and calculated strategy. He sought to avoid knee-jerk reactions that might destabilize the already precarious situation further. His methods included diplomatic negotiations, strategic alliances with key factions, and a cautious evaluation of each potential response to ensure it did not inadvertently escalate the crisis. The difference in their approaches created a significant tension between Mara and Cale. Mara's focus was on immediate, actionable responses to the attacks. She pushed for quick measures to reassure the public and counteract the disruptions caused by the attacks. Her strategy was driven by a sense of urgency, reflecting her fear that the stability they had worked so hard to achieve could crumble if they did not act swiftly. This approach often led her to clash with Cale, who was more inclined to deliberate over the broader implications before committing to any course of action. Cale's strategic approach was not without its own set of challenges. The delay inherent in his methods was perceived by Mara as a lack of urgency or decisiveness. While Cale saw the value in a measured response, Mara felt that the immediate needs of the alliance required a more direct approach. Their differing perspectives on how best to navigate the crisis tested their partnership and strained their working relationship, creating a rift that threatened to undermine their joint efforts. Despite their growing tension, both Mara and Cale were motivated by a shared goal: the preservation of the alliance and the stability of their kingdoms. Their loyalties were tested as they grappled with the challenge of reconciling their conflicting approaches. Each leader was driven by their commitment to the greater good, yet the discord between them highlighted the difficulty of maintaining unity under the pressure of a crisis. Their ability to balance their respective strategies was crucial to managing the situation effectively. The ongoing conflict between their methods necessitated careful negotiation and compromise. Elara, keenly aware of the growing divide, stepped in to mediate between Mara and Cale. She worked to bridge the gap between their approaches, advocating for a balanced strategy that incorporated both immediate actions and long-term planning. Her role became increasingly vital as she sought to harmonize their efforts and ensure that their combined resources were used effectively to address the emerging threat. As the crisis unfolded, the strain on Mara and Cale's relationship became more pronounced. The pressure of the situation amplified their disagreements, revealing the depth of their differing perspectives. Their interactions, once collaborative and supportive, were now marked by frustration and tension. This shift in their dynamic underscored the personal and professional challenges they faced, further complicating their efforts to manage the crisis. Despite the difficulties, Mara and Cale's resolve to protect the alliance remained steadfast. They continued to confront their differences and work towards a unified response, driven by their shared commitment to their kingdoms and each other. The test of their loyalties was not just about navigating the immediate threat, but also about maintaining their mutual respect and trust in the face of adversity. In the end, the crisis served as a crucible for their relationship, challenging their ability to work together under intense pressure. The experience tested their loyalties, not only to their respective roles but also to the overarching mission of preserving peace and stability. Through the turmoil, Mara and Cale were compelled to reassess their strategies and reaffirm their dedication to their shared goals, striving to ensure that their alliance remained strong despite the trials they faced. The days following the emergence of the new threat were marked by frenetic activity and palpable tension. Mara and Cale found themselves at the forefront of this struggle, each grappling with their own doubts and fears. Mara, driven by her unwavering commitment to maintaining peace, was deeply concerned about the potential for the new threat to unravel everything they had worked so hard to achieve. Her focus was on fortifying the alliance and ensuring that the kingdom's stability was preserved, even as the challenge seemed insurmountable. Cale, on the other hand, approached the situation with a strategic mindset, constantly analyzing the implications of the attacks and their potential impact on the political landscape. His commitment to preserving the alliance was matched only by his determination to address the threat head-on, but his methods often clashed with Mara's more immediate concerns. The tension between them was exacerbated by their differing perspectives on how best to navigate the crisis, putting their loyalties to the test in ways they had never anticipated. Their interactions became a battleground of conflicting priorities. Mara's focus was on maintaining public confidence and preventing panic, which led her to prioritize swift, visible actions. Cale's approach was more measured, emphasizing the need for careful diplomacy and strategic maneuvers. Their disagreements on the best course of action created a rift, each feeling that the other's approach threatened the integrity of their efforts. The strain was palpable, as both struggled to reconcile their personal loyalties with their shared mission. The fundamental differences in their approaches led to a growing rift between Mara and Cale. Each felt that the other's strategy undermined their collective efforts, creating a situation where their once unified front began to falter. Mara saw Cale's cautious tactics as overly slow and potentially disastrous in the face of immediate threats, while Cale perceived Mara's swift actions as reckless and likely to provoke further unrest. This discord highlighted the tension between their priorities and put a strain on their ability to work together effectively. The strain between them was palpable, manifesting in tense discussions and frequent disagreements. Their personal loyalties were tested as they grappled with the challenge of reconciling their differing views while maintaining their commitment to their shared mission. The pressure of the crisis intensified their conflicts, making it difficult for them to find common ground. Each leader was acutely aware that their approach was crucial not only to managing the immediate threat but also to preserving the long-term stability of their alliance. Elara, caught in the middle of their conflict, sought to mediate and find a compromise that would address both leaders' concerns. She worked diligently to bridge the gap between Mara's immediate, visible actions and Cale's strategic, long-term planning. Her role became crucial in harmonizing their efforts and ensuring that their combined approach was effective in countering the new threat. Elara's mediation aimed to reconcile their differences and foster a unified response that would strengthen their position against the emerging challenge. As the crisis continued, the need for unity became more apparent. The discord between Mara and Cale highlighted the difficulty of maintaining a cohesive strategy when faced with high-stakes challenges. The experience forced both leaders to confront their own limitations and reconsider their approaches. Their interactions became a test of their ability to navigate not only the external threat but also the internal dynamics of their leadership. The ongoing strain between Mara and Cale underscored the personal sacrifices involved in their roles. The test of their loyalties was not just about managing the crisis, but also about maintaining their professional relationship amidst adversity. Their commitment to their shared mission required them to confront their differences and work towards a common goal, despite the challenges posed by their conflicting priorities. In the end, the crisis served as a crucible for Mara and Cale's relationship, revealing the depth of their dedication and the complexity of their leadership. Their ability to reconcile their approaches and work together effectively would determine the success of their response to the new threat. The experience tested their loyalties, forcing them to balance their individual concerns with their collective mission, and highlighted the fragile nature of their alliance as they navigated through the turbulent times. Elara, ever the mediator, observed the growing discord between Mara and Cale with a heavy heart. Her role had traditionally been to provide historical context and strategic guidance, but the current crisis had introduced a personal dimension to the conflict that was proving to be more challenging than anticipated. As the leader who had always worked to bridge gaps and find common ground, Elara found herself in the difficult position of trying to reconcile the deepening rift between her colleagues. The tension between Mara and Cale was palpable, and it seemed to seep into every aspect of their interactions. Elara knew that the effectiveness of their alliance depended on a unified front, yet the disagreements between Mara's urgent, visible actions and Kael's cautious, strategic maneuvers created a significant obstacle. The personal dynamics between them were adding a layer of complexity to their efforts that she had not fully anticipated. Elara's approach was to offer insights and perspectives that could potentially harmonize their differing strategies. She sought to remind Mara and Kael of the overarching goals they had shared from the beginning and the importance of maintaining their focus on the common objective. Her aim was to realign their energies and strategies in a way that would benefit the Alliance as a whole, despite their personal disagreements. The difference in their approaches created a significant tension between Mara and Kael. Mara's focus was on immediate, actionable responses to the attacks. She pushed for quick measures to reassure the public and counteract the disruptions caused by the attacks. Her strategy was driven by a sense of urgency, reflecting her fear that the stability they had worked so hard to achieve could crumble if they did not act swiftly. This approach often led her to clash with Kael, who was more inclined to deliberate over the broader implications before committing to any course of action. Kael's strategic approach was not without its own set of challenges. The delay inherent in his methods was perceived by Mara as a lack of urgency or decisiveness. While Kael saw the value in a measured response, Mara felt that the immediate needs of the Alliance required a more direct approach. Their differing perspectives on how best to navigate the crisis tested their partnership and strained their working relationship, creating a rift that threatened to undermine their joint efforts. Despite their growing tension, both Mara and Kael were motivated by a shared goal: the preservation of the Alliance and the stability of their kingdoms. Their loyalties were tested as they grappled with the challenge of reconciling their conflicting approaches. Each leader was driven by their commitment to the greater good, yet the discord between them highlighted the difficulty of maintaining unity under the pressure of a crisis. Their ability to balance their respective strategies was crucial to managing the situation effectively. The ongoing conflict between their methods necessitated careful negotiation and compromise. Elara, keenly aware of the growing divide, stepped in to mediate between Mara and Kael. She worked to bridge the gap between their approaches, advocating for a balanced strategy that incorporated both immediate actions and long-term planning. Her role became increasingly vital as she sought to harmonize their efforts and ensure that their combined resources were used effectively to address the emerging threat. As the crisis unfolded, the strain on Mara and Kael's relationship became more pronounced. The pressure of the situation amplified their disagreements, revealing the depth of their differing perspectives. Their interactions, once collaborative and supportive, were now marked by frustration and tension. This shift in their dynamic underscored the personal and professional challenges they faced, further complicating their efforts to manage the crisis. Despite the difficulties, Mara and Kael's resolve to protect the Alliance remained steadfast. They continued to confront their differences and work towards a unified response, driven by their shared commitment to their kingdoms and each other. The test of their loyalties was not just about navigating the immediate threat, but also about maintaining their mutual respect and trust in the face of adversity. In the end, the crisis served as a crucible for their relationship, challenging their ability to work together under intense pressure. The experience tested their loyalties, not only to their respective roles but also to the overarching mission of preserving peace and stability. Through the turmoil, Mara and Kael were compelled to reassess their strategies and reaffirm their dedication to their shared goals, striving to ensure that their alliance remained strong despite the trials they faced. The days following the emergence of the new threat were marked by frenetic activity and palpable tension. Mara and Kael found themselves at the forefront of this struggle, each grappling with their own doubts and fears. Mara, driven by her unwavering commitment to maintaining peace, was deeply concerned about the potential for the new threat to unravel everything they had worked so hard to achieve. Her focus was on fortifying the alliance and ensuring that the kingdom's stability was preserved, even as the challenge seemed insurmountable. Cale, on the other hand, approached the situation with a strategic mindset, constantly analyzing the implications of the attacks and their potential impact on the political landscape. His commitment to preserving the alliance was matched only by his determination to address the threat head-on, but his methods often clashed with Mara's more immediate concerns. The tension between them was exacerbated by their differing perspectives on how best to navigate the crisis, putting their loyalties to the test in ways they had never anticipated. Their interactions became a battleground of conflicting priorities. Mara's focus was on maintaining public confidence and preventing panic, which led her to prioritize swift, visible actions. Cale's approach was more measured, emphasizing the need for careful diplomacy and strategic maneuvers. Their disagreements on the best course of action created a rift, each feeling that the other's approach threatened the integrity of their efforts. The strain was palpable, as both struggled to reconcile their personal loyalties with their shared mission. The fundamental differences in their approaches led to a growing rift between Mara and Cale. Each felt that the other's strategy undermined their collective efforts, creating a situation where their once unified front began to falter. Mara saw Cale's cautious tactics as overly slow and potentially disastrous in the face of immediate threats, while Cale perceived Mara's swift actions as reckless and likely to provoke further unrest. This discord highlighted the tension between their priorities and put a strain on their ability to work together effectively. The strain between them was palpable, manifesting in tense discussions and frequent disagreements. Their personal loyalties were tested as they grappled with the challenge of reconciling their differing views while maintaining their commitment to their shared mission. The pressure of the crisis intensified their conflicts, making it difficult for them to find common ground. Each leader was acutely aware that their approach was crucial not only to managing the immediate threat but also to preserving the long-term stability of their alliance. Elara, caught in the middle of their conflict, sought to mediate and find a compromise that would address both leaders' concerns. She worked diligently to bridge the gap between Mara's immediate, visible actions and Cale's strategic, long-term planning. Her role became crucial in harmonizing their efforts and ensuring that their combined approach was effective in countering the new threat. Elara's mediation aimed to reconcile their differences and foster a unified response that would strengthen their position against the emerging challenge. As the crisis continued, the need for unity became more apparent. The discord between Mara and Cale highlighted the difficulty of maintaining a cohesive strategy when faced with high-stakes challenges. The experience forced both leaders to confront their own limitations and reconsider their approaches. Their interactions became a test of their ability to navigate not only the external threat but also the internal dynamics of their leadership. The ongoing strain between Mara and Cale underscored the personal sacrifices involved in their roles. The test of their loyalties was not just about managing the crisis but also about maintaining their professional relationship amidst adversity. Their commitment to their shared mission required them to confront their differences and work towards a common goal, despite the challenges posed by their conflicting priorities. In the end, the crisis served as a crucible for Mara and Cale's relationship, revealing the depth of their dedication and the complexity of their leadership. Their ability to reconcile their approaches and work together effectively would determine the success of their response to the new threat. The experience tested their loyalties, forcing them to balance their individual concerns with their collective mission, and highlighted the fragile nature of their alliance as they navigated through the turbulent times. Elara, ever the mediator, observed the growing discord between Mara and Cale with a heavy heart. Her role had traditionally been to provide historical context and strategic guidance, but the current crisis had introduced a personal dimension to the conflict that was proving to be more challenging than anticipated. As the leader who had always worked to bridge gaps and find common ground, Alara found herself in the difficult position of trying to reconcile the deepening rift between her colleagues. The tension between Mara and Kale was palpable, and it seemed to seep into every aspect of their interactions. Alara knew that the effectiveness of their alliance depended on a unified front, yet the disagreements between Mara's urgent, visible actions and Kale's cautious, strategic maneuvers created a significant obstacle. The personal dynamics between them were adding a layer of complexity to their efforts that she had not fully anticipated. Alara's approach was to offer insights and perspectives that could potentially harmonize their differing strategies. She sought to remind Mara and Kale of the overarching goals they had shared from the beginning and the importance of maintaining their focus on the common objective. Her aim was to realign their energies and strategies in a way that would benefit the alliance as a whole, despite their personal disagreements. In her efforts to mediate, Alara emphasized the historical lessons that could inform their current situation. She drew parallels from past conflicts, highlighting how similar crises had been managed through compromise and collaboration. By providing this context, she hoped to inspire Mara and Kale to find a middle ground that would allow them to address the new threat effectively while preserving their alliance. Despite her best efforts, the underlying tension between Mara and Kale remained a constant reminder of the fragile nature of their alliance. The discord between the two leaders was not just a challenge to their personal relationship, but also a risk to the stability of their collective efforts. Alara was acutely aware that the success of their response to the new threat hinged on their ability to work together harmoniously. Alara's role became increasingly crucial as she worked tirelessly to mediate and find solutions that could ease the strain. She scheduled meetings between Mara and Kale, carefully facilitating discussions that aimed to address their concerns and find common ground. Her efforts were focused on preventing their personal conflicts from undermining their broader mission and ensuring that their alliance remained intact. As the crisis progressed, Alara continued to provide both historical insights and strategic advice, striving to balance the immediate needs of the situation with long-term considerations. Her goal was to foster a collaborative environment where Mara and Kale could put aside their differences and focus on their shared mission. The delicate nature of her role required her to be both a diplomat and a mediator, navigating the complexities of their interpersonal dynamics. Alara's dedication to her role was evident in her tireless work to bridge the gap between Mara and Kale. She remained committed to finding solutions that would enable them to overcome their differences and address the new threat effectively. Her efforts were crucial in maintaining the cohesion of their alliance and ensuring that their collective actions remained focused on their common objectives. In the end, Alara's role as mediator was both challenging and essential. The experience underscored the importance of leadership that could navigate personal conflicts while maintaining a unified front in the face of external threats. Her ability to manage the delicate balance between Mara and Kale highlighted the complexities of leadership and the critical need for collaboration in times of crisis. Alara, ever the mediator, observed the growing discord between Mara and Kale with a heavy heart. Her role had traditionally been to provide historical context and strategic guidance, but the current crisis had introduced a personal dimension to the conflict that was proving to be more challenging than anticipated. As the leader who had always worked to bridge gaps and find common ground, Alara found herself in the difficult position of trying to reconcile the deepening rift between her colleagues. The tension between Mara and Kale was palpable, manifesting itself in their daily interactions and decision-making processes. Mara, focused on immediate, visible actions to reassure the public, clashed with Kale's preference for cautious, long-term strategies aimed at preserving the alliance's integrity. Alara was acutely aware that this discord was not merely a personal conflict, but a threat to their collective ability to manage the new threat effectively. Alara knew that the effectiveness of their alliance hinged on a unified front. She endeavored to remind both leaders of the shared goals they had from the beginning and the importance of their combined efforts. In her attempts to mediate, she highlighted the broader mission they were working towards, hoping to realign their energies and strategies in a way that would serve their common objective rather than their individual preferences. In her mediation efforts, Elara sought to provide historical context that might help Mara and Kale see beyond their immediate disagreements. She drew upon lessons from past conflicts, emphasizing how similar crises had been resolved through compromise and cooperation. Her hope was that by framing their current situation within this historical perspective, she could inspire a more collaborative approach to the new threat. Despite her best efforts, the underlying tension between Mara and Kale remained a persistent challenge. Elara was constantly reminded of how precarious their alliance was, with the personal conflicts between the two leaders threatening to undermine their collective efforts. The discord was not just a matter of differing opinions but a risk to the stability and success of their mission. Elara's role as mediator required her to navigate the complexities of their interpersonal dynamics while keeping the focus on their overarching goals. She organized meetings between Mara and Kale, meticulously facilitating discussions to address their concerns and find common ground. Her goal was to prevent their personal differences from derailing their broader mission and to ensure that their alliance stayed intact. As the crisis unfolded, Elara continued to offer both historical insights and strategic advice. She balanced the immediate needs of the situation with long-term considerations, aiming to create an environment where Mara and Kale could work together effectively. Her dedication to fostering a collaborative atmosphere was crucial in maintaining the cohesion of their alliance during this critical period. Elara's tireless efforts were essential in managing the delicate balance between Mara and Kale. Her role underscored the complexities of leadership in times of crisis, where personal conflicts could jeopardize collective success. By navigating these challenges with diplomacy and persistence, Elara played a key role in ensuring that their alliance remained focused on their shared objectives. Ultimately, Elara's experience as a mediator highlighted the importance of collaboration and unity in leadership. The difficulties she faced in reconciling Mara and Kale demonstrated the critical need for leaders to manage interpersonal conflicts while maintaining a cohesive strategy. Her ability to guide them through this turbulent time was a testament to her skills and dedication, underscoring the vital role of mediation in overcoming crisis. In the end, Mara and Kale's ability to navigate this test of loyalties would become the decisive factor in their efforts to confront the new threat. The stakes had never been higher, and the consequences of their decisions would ripple through both kingdoms. Their relationship, once a pillar of strength, was now strained by the pressures of their current crisis, making their ability to reconcile their differences critical to their success. The journey they faced was far from over, and the road ahead was shrouded in uncertainty. Each step forward was fraught with potential setbacks, and the tension between Mara and Kale added an additional layer of complexity to their mission. Despite their shared commitment to their cause, the discord between them threatened to undermine their efforts, casting a shadow over their progress. Yet, through the trials they endured, Mara and Kale were reminded of the strength that had emerged from their shared purpose. The challenges they had faced together had forged a bond that had previously seemed unbreakable. This bond was a testament to their dedication and the sacrifices they had made in pursuit of their goals. It was this shared history that would serve as a foundation for overcoming their current difficulties. The trials they had experienced had tested their resolve and revealed the depth of their commitment. As they faced the new threat, they had to rely on the very strengths that had brought them together. The ability to trust in one another, despite their differences, was crucial in navigating the complex landscape of their current crisis. Their journey had forged a deep understanding of each other's strengths and weaknesses, which they now needed more than ever. Together, Mara and Kale would confront the challenges that lay ahead, their loyalty to each other, and their mission tested but resolute. They recognized that their ability to work through their differences was integral to the survival of their alliance. By reaffirming their commitment to their shared goals, they could channel their energies into addressing the new threat and restoring the fragile peace they had worked so hard to achieve. The new threat demanded not just tactical responses, but also a unified front that only Mara and Kale could provide. Their leadership was essential in rallying support and ensuring that their efforts were not undermined by internal strife. As they moved forward, they had to remain steadfast in their resolve, drawing strength from their shared history and the lessons learned from their past experiences. The path ahead would be challenging, and the uncertainty of their situation could not be ignored. However, Mara and Kale's ability to navigate their personal and political conflicts would play a pivotal role in determining their success. Their journey was a testament to the power of resilience and the importance of unity in the face of adversity. In facing the new threat, Mara and Kale would need to demonstrate not only their strategic acumen, but also their ability to reconcile their differences and work together. Their continued success would depend on their ability to overcome their internal conflicts and focus on their shared mission. The strength of their alliance and the stability of their kingdoms hinged on their capacity to rise above their challenges. Ultimately, Mara and Kale's journey was a reflection of their dedication to their cause and each other. Despite the trials and tribulations they faced, their commitment to their mission remained unshaken. As they confronted the new threat and worked to preserve the fragile peace, their loyalty to each other and their shared purpose would be their greatest asset in overcoming the obstacles that lay ahead. Chapter 45: A Strategic Counterattack. The room was thick with tension as Mara, Kale, and Elara convened to strategize their next move. The gravity of their situation weighed heavily on each of them, their expressions mirroring the severity of the threat they faced. This wasn't merely a case of random aggression. The new threat bore all the marks of a carefully orchestrated campaign to dismantle everything they had worked for. The fragile peace, so painstakingly crafted, now hung by a thread, and they knew that the time for passive defense was over. Their enemies had shown their hand, and it was time to respond with equal decisiveness. Mara, ever the diplomat, was the first to voice the unspoken understanding among them. "We've been reacting to their moves, trying to patch up the damage as it comes," she began, her voice steady but laced with an underlying urgency. "But these attacks are escalating. They're not just testing our defenses, they're trying to break our will, to make us question our own strength. We can't afford to stay on the defensive any longer. If we don't act now, they'll continue to gain ground, and soon we'll have nothing left to defend." Her words echoed in the silence that followed, the stark reality of their situation settling in. Kale, always the strategist, nodded in agreement. His mind had already been racing ahead, mapping out potential responses and countermeasures. "We need to turn the tables on them," he said, his tone firm and resolute. "Our enemies have been calculating, precise in their attacks, but they've underestimated our ability to strike back. We have to hit them where it hurts, disrupt their operations, and show them that we're not just a passive alliance holding on to the remnants of peace. We're still capable of mounting a formidable offense." His eyes flicked between Mara and Elara, seeking their input, his resolve clear. Elara, whose insights had guided them through many crises, was deep in thought. She knew that a counterattack was necessary, but it had to be carefully planned, with each move calculated to achieve maximum impact. "We must be strategic in our response," she finally said, her voice thoughtful yet decisive. "It's not just about retaliating, it's about sending a message. We need to target their command centers, disrupt their supply lines, and expose the cracks in their organization. If we can destabilize their leadership and create chaos within their ranks, we'll not only weaken their immediate threat but also deter any future attempts to challenge us." The trio spent the next hours meticulously planning their counterattack, each contributing their unique strengths to the strategy. Mara focused on the diplomatic aspects, considering how they could leverage their actions to strengthen alliances and garner support from other factions that had been sitting on the sidelines. Cale, with his military expertise, outlined the operational details, identifying key targets and coordinating the logistics of their strike. Elara, meanwhile, provided the historical context, drawing parallels with past conflicts and suggesting tactics that had proven effective in similar situations. Together, they crafted a plan that was both bold and calculated, a combination of immediate retaliation and long-term strategic positioning. As they finalized their strategy, a sense of resolve began to replace the earlier tension. The uncertainty that had plagued them in recent days was still present, but it was now tempered by a clear direction and a united front. They knew the risks involved in launching such an offensive, but the alternative, allowing their enemies to continue their campaign of destabilization, was far more dangerous. This counterattack was not just about survival. It was about reclaiming the initiative and demonstrating that their alliance was not to be trifled with. The decision made, the trio prepared to set their plan into motion. They knew that the coming days would be critical, and that success would require not only precise execution but also unwavering resolve. Each of them felt the weight of their responsibilities, but they also understood that this was a pivotal moment in their struggle. The stakes had never been higher, and the outcome of this counterattack would determine the future of their kingdoms and their alliance. As they parted ways to oversee their respective roles in the operation, there was a shared sense of purpose among them. The time for hesitation was over. Now was the time for action. With their plan in place and their determination steeled, Mara, Cale, and Elara were ready to take the fight to their enemies, confident that they could protect the fragile peace they had worked so hard to achieve. Mara broke the silence, her voice cutting through the tension in the room with unwavering resolve. "We can't allow these attacks to continue unchecked," she declared, her tone leaving no room for doubt. The weight of the recent events had pressed heavily on her, but it had also steeled her determination. "We've been reacting to their moves, but it's time we took the initiative." Her gaze swept across the room, locking onto Cale and Elara, both of whom had become her closest allies in this complex and dangerous game of power. There was no question in her mind that they needed to act, and act decisively. Her words carried the conviction of someone who had weathered countless storms, and her resolve was evident in every syllable. "We need a strategic counterattack," she continued, her voice gaining momentum as she laid out her vision. "One that will not only neutralize this threat, but also send a clear message that we will not be intimidated." Mara's eyes were sharp, reflecting the inner fire that had carried them through so many trials before. She was not one to shy away from confrontation when the stakes were this high, and she understood better than anyone that sometimes the best defense was a strong offense. The room fell silent for a moment as Mara's words hung in the air, the weight of the decision before them palpable. She knew the risks involved in launching an offensive, especially against an enemy as calculating and elusive as the one they now faced. But she also understood that doing nothing, or merely continuing to react to their enemies' moves, would only embolden their adversaries. The attacks had become more coordinated, more destructive, and Mara could see the writing on the wall. This was an enemy that needed to be met head-on, with the full force of their alliance. Cale was the first to respond, his expression thoughtful yet serious. He respected Mara's leadership and had come to rely on her instincts, even when they differed from his more strategic approach. "You're right," he said, nodding slowly. "We can't afford to let them dictate the terms of this conflict. A counterattack could turn the tide, but it has to be precise. We need to hit them where it hurts, disrupt their operations, and make it clear that we're not just defending, we're on the offensive." His mind was already working through the logistics, identifying key targets and potential strategies that could give them the upper hand. Elara, who had been listening intently, added her voice to the discussion. "It's crucial that we consider the broader implications as well," she said, her tone measured and analytical. "A counterattack needs to be more than just a show of strength. It has to be part of a larger strategy to undermine their support base and fracture their alliances. If we can destabilize their leadership and create doubt within their ranks, we can do more than just repel this immediate threat. We can weaken them in the long run." Elara's insight was invaluable, as always, reminding them that their actions needed to be both decisive and calculated. Mara absorbed their input, her mind racing as she considered the various facets of their situation. She was well aware that this counterattack would be a turning point, one way or another. "We'll need to coordinate closely," she said, her voice steady but urgent. "Our actions must be swift and unified. We can't afford any missteps." She was already thinking ahead, planning how they could marshal their resources and deploy their forces in a way that maximized their impact while minimizing their risks. The success of this operation would depend on their ability to work together, to trust in each other's strengths, and to act with unwavering resolve. As the discussion continued, the plan began to take shape, with each of them contributing their expertise to the strategy. Mara's resolve, Kale's strategic mind, and Elara's nuanced understanding of political dynamics formed the backbone of their approach. There was no doubt that the road ahead would be difficult, fraught with dangers and unforeseen challenges. But for the first time since the attacks had begun, Mara felt a renewed sense of purpose. They were no longer just reacting, they were taking control of their fate. Kale nodded in agreement, his mind already leaping ahead to the logistics and strategy that would be required. "Agreed," he said firmly, his tone carrying the weight of his resolve. His mind, always quick to analyze and plan, was already mapping out the steps they needed to take. "We need to identify the key players behind these attacks and strike at the heart of their operation." His gaze was sharp as he spoke, his eyes narrowing with the intensity of his focus. This was more than just a counteroffensive. It was about dismantling the entire structure that allowed their enemies to operate with such impunity. He knew that simply repelling their forces wouldn't be enough. "It won't be enough to just repel their forces. We need to dismantle their entire network," Kale continued, his voice calm but filled with determination. The situation required more than just immediate action. It demanded a long-term strategy that would cripple their enemies from within. He was thinking several moves ahead, considering the ripple effects that would follow if they were successful. The idea of taking out their leadership and disrupting their communication channels became the focal point of his thoughts, the cornerstone of a plan that could shift the balance of power in their favor. As he laid out his thoughts, Kale's tone grew even more decisive. "If we can take out their leadership and disrupt their communication channels, we'll cripple their ability to coordinate further attacks." His voice was steady, betraying none of the doubts that might have been lurking in the back of his mind. He was fully committed to this course of action, believing that a targeted, strategic assault was their best chance of neutralizing the threat. His words carried a sense of urgency, yet they were tempered with the careful consideration of a man who knew just how high the stakes were. Mara listened intently, her expression serious as she absorbed Kale's assessment. She respected his strategic insight, knowing that his ability to think several steps ahead had been crucial to their survival thus far. "You're right," she agreed, her voice firm. "We can't afford to let them regroup and come at us again. This needs to be decisive." She understood the necessity of a swift, coordinated strike that would leave no room for retaliation. The idea of dismantling their enemy's network appealed to her pragmatic side, and she was fully on board with the plan. Elara, ever the voice of caution, nodded in agreement but added a note of consideration. "We'll need to gather as much intelligence as we can before we strike," she advised, her tone thoughtful. "We need to be certain of our targets, or we risk missing key players and giving them time to regroup." Her words were a reminder that while speed was of the essence, precision was equally important. Striking at the wrong moment, or missing critical elements of their enemy's network could lead to a prolonged conflict, one that could potentially weaken their own position. Cale acknowledged Alara's point with a nod. "You're right. We need to be thorough. We can't afford to leave any loose ends." His mind was already racing with possibilities for how they could gather the necessary intelligence quickly and effectively. Perhaps they could leverage existing alliances or deploy covert operatives to infiltrate the enemy's ranks. Whatever the method, it was clear that they needed to be meticulous in their planning. The success of their counterattack depended not only on the strength of their strike but also on the accuracy of their information. With their course set, the trio knew that the next steps would be crucial. They had to move quickly but with the utmost care, balancing the need for immediate action with the necessity of precision. The tension in the room was palpable, but it was tempered by the shared determination that had brought them through countless challenges before. As they began to outline the details of their plan, there was a renewed sense of purpose in the air. The path ahead was fraught with danger, but they were united in their resolve to see this through to the end, to protect their kingdoms and the fragile peace they had fought so hard to secure. Alara, known for her measured approach and careful consideration, spoke up with a tone that was both cautious and insightful. "We must be careful, though," she began, her voice steady and calm, cutting through the tension in the room. Her gaze moved between Mara and Cale, emphasizing the gravity of her words. "A direct assault carries significant risks, and if we're not careful, we could inadvertently escalate the situation." She knew the importance of striking a balance between aggression and diplomacy, and she wasn't afraid to voice her concerns, even as the momentum seemed to be building toward a more confrontational strategy. Her words hung in the air, a stark contrast to the urgency that had been driving the discussion. Alara understood that while a strong offense might be necessary, it was equally important to consider the broader implications of their actions. "We need to strike with precision," she continued, her tone deliberate, "and ensure that our actions are calculated to achieve maximum impact with minimal collateral damage." Alara's mind was already running through scenarios where a poorly executed attack could lead to unintended consequences, and she wanted to make sure that they didn't rush into something that could backfire. Mara and Cale listened, the weight of Alara's warning sinking in. They both knew she was right. A misstep at this stage could undo all the progress they had made and potentially turn allies into enemies. "A misstep could cost us the support of our allies," Alara added, her voice carrying a note of urgency, "and potentially alienate factions within our own kingdoms." The risks were real, and Alara was acutely aware of how fragile their alliance truly was. One wrong move could shatter the trust they had worked so hard to build and send them spiraling into deeper conflict. Alara's caution didn't dampen the resolve in the room, but it did introduce a necessary element of restraint. They couldn't afford to act impulsively, no matter how strong the desire to retaliate might be. "Our strategy must be as much about maintaining our alliances as it is about defeating this new threat," Alara concluded, her eyes locking with Mara's and Cale's. She knew they needed to tread carefully, and her words were a reminder of the high stakes involved. They weren't just fighting an external enemy, they were also safeguarding the unity of their own people. The trio fell into a contemplative silence, each of them processing Alara's perspective. They understood that their next steps would require not just boldness, but also finesse. Alara had reminded them of the delicate balance they needed to maintain, one that involved more than just military might. It required the subtle art of diplomacy, the careful management of relationships, and a deep understanding of the political landscape they were navigating. This wasn't just a battle. It was a test of their leadership and their ability to think several moves ahead. Kale broke the silence, his tone more measured now, having absorbed Alara's concerns. "You're right," he admitted, his strategic mind already adjusting the plan to incorporate a more nuanced approach. "We need to be as precise in our diplomacy as we are in our military actions. We can't afford to alienate anyone." His acknowledgement of Alara's point marked a shift in their approach, one that would guide their decisions in the coming days. The focus wasn't just on winning the battle but on ensuring that their victory didn't come at too high a cost. Mara, too, found herself recalibrating. The urgency of their situation hadn't diminished, but Alara's reminder had grounded her in the reality of what they were up against. "We'll proceed with caution," she agreed, her voice resolute but tempered with the wisdom that Alara had imparted. "We need to be smart about this, not just forceful." The plan that they would devise in the coming hours would reflect this new understanding, a strategy that combined the strength of their conviction with the precision and care required to navigate the complex web of alliances and loyalties that defined their world. The trio spent the next several hours immersed in a flurry of activity, the weight of their task palpable as they pored over intelligence reports. The room was filled with the rustle of papers, the soft hum of tactical discussions, and the occasional sharp intake of breath as new details emerged. Every piece of information was scrutinized, every troop movement analyzed with painstaking care. It was as though they were piecing together a vast, complex puzzle, each fragment of intelligence a clue to their enemy's intentions. The stakes were high, and they knew there was little room for error. Mara, with her keen eye for detail, focused on identifying patterns within the enemy's activities. She noticed the subtle shifts in their supply lines, the changes in the deployment of forces that hinted at underlying vulnerabilities. "Here," she pointed out, her finger tracing a route on the map. "This supply route is critical. If we can disrupt it, we'll cut off their access to essential resources." Her insight was the first thread in a strategy that would soon take shape, a plan designed to strike at the very heart of their adversaries' operations. Kale, ever the strategist, took Mara's observations and began to weave them into a broader plan. His mind raced as he considered the implications of each move, the potential ripple effects that could either secure their victory or lead to disaster. "We need to hit multiple targets simultaneously," he suggested, his tone decisive. "A multi-pronged attack that will stretch their defenses thin and force them to react rather than plan. If we can hit their key infrastructure and leadership figures at the same time, we'll throw them into chaos." His vision was bold, aiming not just to disrupt the enemy's operations but to completely upend their strategy. Alara, always attuned to the nuances of the situation, considered the human element. She knew that the success of their plan would depend not only on precise execution but also on the morale and cohesion of their own forces. "We must ensure that our troops are fully prepared," she urged, her voice calm but firm. "They need to understand the importance of this operation, but we also need to minimize the risks they'll face. We can't afford heavy losses. It would undermine everything we're trying to achieve." Her words were a reminder of the delicate balance they had to maintain between aggression and caution. As they continued to work, the strategy began to crystallize. It was a plan that combined the strengths of each leader, Mara's attention to detail, Kale's strategic brilliance, and Alara's understanding of the human cost of war. They would launch a series of coordinated strikes, targeting not just the enemy's physical infrastructure but also their command structure. The aim was to sow confusion, to disrupt their communications and supply lines, and to force them into a defensive posture where they would be more vulnerable. The plan was ambitious, but it was also carefully calculated to maximize impact while minimizing risk. Hours passed, and the map before them began to resemble a battlefield already in motion, with arrows indicating troop movements, circles marking key targets, and lines connecting the various elements of their strategy. The tension in the room had shifted from uncertainty to a focused intensity, each leader fully committed to the course they had set. They knew that the success of this counterattack would hinge on their ability to execute it flawlessly, to anticipate their enemies' reactions, and to adapt quickly as the situation evolved. Finally, as the first light of dawn began to filter through the windows, they stood back to assess their work. The strategy was complete, a clear plan of action that would take the fight to their enemies and protect their kingdoms from the encroaching threat. Mara, Kael, and Elara exchanged a look that spoke of both resolve and the heavy burden of leadership. They had done all they could to prepare, and now it was time to put their plan into motion. The next phase of their struggle was about to begin, and with it, the true test of their alliance and their resolve. Mara quickly assumed command of the military coordination, her natural leadership and deep understanding of battlefield tactics coming to the fore. She meticulously organized the various units that would be deployed in the upcoming operation, drawing on her experience to ensure that every detail was accounted for. From the positioning of troops to the timing of their movements, Mara left nothing to chance. She was in constant communication with the field commanders, making sure that everyone understood the overarching strategy and their specific roles within it. Her decisiveness instilled confidence in the troops, who knew they were being led by someone who had their best interests at heart and the expertise to lead them to victory. While Mara focused on the battlefield, Kael turned his attention to the logistical challenges that could make or break their plan. He meticulously reviewed the resources at their disposal, ensuring that every unit was properly equipped and that the supply lines were secure. Kael knew that even the most brilliant strategy could fail if the soldiers lacked the necessary supplies or if their reinforcements were delayed. He worked tirelessly to streamline the flow of resources, coordinating with quartermasters and supply officers to anticipate any potential bottlenecks. His strategic mind, usually occupied with grander schemes, was now laser-focused on the minutiae of logistics, knowing that these details would be crucial to their success. Elara, meanwhile, took charge of the diplomatic efforts that would underpin their military actions. She reached out to their allies, carefully explaining the situation and the necessity of their planned counterattack. Elara's ability to navigate the complex web of political relationships was invaluable. She understood that their actions needed to be not only effective but also supported by the broader coalition. She spent hours in negotiations, ensuring that their allies were fully briefed and that any concerns were addressed before they could become points of contention. Her diplomatic finesse ensured that the coalition remained united and that their actions would be backed by the necessary political will. As the days passed, the trio worked in concert, each focused on their respective roles but always aware of the larger picture. The scale of the operation was immense, involving countless moving parts, but their shared sense of purpose kept them aligned. Mara, Kael, and Elara met frequently to update each other on their progress and to adjust their plans as new information came in. These meetings were intense but productive, with each leader bringing their expertise to the table. The mutual respect they had developed over time was evident in the way they listened to one another and integrated each other's ideas into the overall strategy. The unity they displayed in their preparations was a testament to the strength of their alliance. Despite the pressures they faced and the high stakes of the situation, there was no room for ego or personal agendas. Each of them understood that their success depended on their ability to work together, to trust in each other's abilities, and to remain focused on their common goal. This sense of unity extended to their respective teams as well. The soldiers, logisticians, and diplomats under their command took their cues from their leaders, working with a level of coordination and dedication that was inspiring to witness. As the final pieces of the plan fell into place, the sense of anticipation grew. The trio knew that once the operation began, there would be no turning back. Every decision they had made, every hour they had spent preparing, would soon be put to the test. Yet, rather than being daunted by the enormity of the task ahead, they were fueled by the belief in their cause and the trust they had in each other. The challenges they had faced together had forged a bond that was unbreakable, and they were ready to face whatever came next with a unified front. On the eve of the operation, Mara, Kale, and Alara stood together, looking out over the assembled forces that were now ready to move at their command. The weight of leadership pressed heavily on their shoulders, but it was a burden they were prepared to carry. They knew that the success of their counterattack would not only protect their kingdoms, but would also be a defining moment in their alliance. With everything in place, they exchanged a final look of determination, silently reaffirming their commitment to each other and to the cause they had pledged to defend. As the final preparations for the counterattack fell into place, a heavy sense of anticipation hung in the air. Mara, Kale, and Alara felt the enormity of what they were about to embark upon. The gravity of the situation was undeniable. They were on the cusp of an operation that would determine the future of their kingdoms. The weight of this responsibility bore down on them, a constant reminder of the stakes involved. Every decision they had made led to this moment, and the outcome would either secure the peace they had fought so hard to achieve or thrust their kingdoms into a deeper, more perilous chaos. Mara stood at the center of the war room, her gaze sweeping over the maps and battle plans spread before her. The realization that lives would be lost in the upcoming conflict gnawed at her, but she knew that the alternative, inaction, would be even more devastating. The resolve in her eyes was unmistakable. She had always been driven by a fierce commitment to protect her people, and now, that commitment was more critical than ever. There was no room for doubt or hesitation. She had to lead with confidence, knowing that her decisions could make the difference between victory and disaster. Kale, too, felt the immense pressure as he reviewed the logistical aspects of the operation one last time. He understood that any flaw in their planning could have catastrophic consequences. His strategic mind was working at full capacity, analyzing every possible outcome, every potential pitfall. The success of their counterattack hinged not just on brute force but on precision, timing, and execution. Kale knew that they were walking a tightrope. One wrong step could send them tumbling into chaos. Yet, despite the risks, he felt a steely determination within him. This was the moment they had been preparing for, and he was ready to see it through. Alara, ever the diplomat, was acutely aware of the broader implications of their actions. She knew that their success depended not only on military might but also on maintaining the delicate balance of alliances that had been so painstakingly built. The coalition's support was crucial, and any misstep could fracture the unity they had managed to sustain. Alara's thoughts were a whirlwind of potential diplomatic fallout, but she knew she couldn't allow herself to be paralyzed by the what-ifs. Instead, she focused on ensuring that their allies were fully informed and aligned with their strategy, trusting that their mutual interests would keep them united in the face of the coming storm. The tension in the air was palpable as the trio convened one last time before the operation was set to begin. Each of them carried the burden of their respective roles, but they also shared a deep sense of camaraderie that had been forged in the crucible of their shared struggles. There was an unspoken understanding between them, a recognition that, despite the challenges, they were stronger together. The trust they had in one another was a source of strength, allowing them to face the uncertain future with a sense of solidarity and purpose. As the final orders were given, a quiet resolve settled over the room. The time for planning was over. The time for action had come. The tension that had been building for days reached its peak, yet there was also a sense of calm that came with the clarity of purpose. Mara, Kale, and Alara knew what needed to be done, and they were ready to see it through. The weight of their responsibilities was immense, but so too was their determination to protect their kingdoms and the fragile peace they had worked so tirelessly to maintain. The moments before the operation commenced were filled with a solemn quiet, a stark contrast to the intensity that would soon unfold. Each leader took a moment to gather their thoughts, to steel themselves for what lay ahead. They knew that once the counterattack was launched, there would be no turning back. The path they had chosen was fraught with danger, but it was also the only path that offered a chance at securing a future free from the shadow of war. With one last glance at each other, they signaled their readiness. The time for hesitation had passed. It was time to act. And so, with their resolve solidified and their plans in motion, Mara, Kale, and Alara stepped into the unknown, fully aware of the risks but driven by an unwavering commitment to protect their people and their kingdoms. The counterattack would soon begin, and with it, the fate of their alliance and the future of their world would be decided. The day of the counterattack dawned with an atmosphere thick with anticipation and resolve. The early morning light filtered through the command tent's flaps, casting long shadows over the maps and charts that had become their constant companions. Mara, Kale, and Alara stood together, reviewing the final details of their meticulously crafted plan. Their forces were strategically positioned, each unit prepared for the role it was to play in the grand scheme of the operation. The meticulousness of their preparations was a testament to their commitment and understanding of the gravity of the situation. As the final hour approached, the air was charged with a palpable tension. Each leader took a moment to reflect on the sacrifices that had led them to this point, their minds focused on the task ahead. Mara's gaze was steady, her mind sharp as she considered the immediate challenges they would face. The weight of command settled heavily on her shoulders, but her resolve was unwavering. She knew that the success of this operation was crucial not just for their immediate safety but for the future stability of their kingdoms. Kale, ever the strategist, was deeply engrossed in ensuring that every logistical detail was in place. His eyes scanned the latest reports and updates, making final adjustments to their plans. The precision of his preparations was evident in the way he moved, every gesture deliberate as he coordinated with his officers. The success of their counterattack depended on flawless execution, and Kale was determined to see it through. He was fully aware of the risks, but his focus remained on the mission and its objectives. Alara, meanwhile, worked to ensure that the diplomatic front remained stable. Her efforts had been focused on keeping their allies informed and supportive of the counterattack. She understood the importance of maintaining these relationships, especially during such a critical time. Her role was as much about communication and reassurance as it was about strategy. She knew that any disruption in their coalition could jeopardize their efforts, and she was committed to preventing that from happening. The moment came when Mara, Kale, and Alara gave the order to commence the operation. The command was relayed with precision, setting the wheels of their counterattack into motion. The forces, positioned and primed, began to mobilize, their movements synchronized with the carefully laid plans. The ground shook with the sounds of preparation as troops and machinery moved into place, ready to engage in the battle that would determine the future of their kingdoms. As the first signals of the counterattack were sent, a wave of determination surged through the ranks. The battle ahead was expected to be fierce, and the potential for both triumph and catastrophe loomed large. Mara, Kale, and Alara knew that they were embarking on a course fraught with peril, but their commitment to their cause was unwavering. They had come too far and sacrificed too much to falter now. Their focus was on ensuring that their strategy was executed flawlessly and that their objectives were achieved. With the operation underway, the trio remained resolute in their commitment to their people, their alliance, and the fragile peace they had fought so hard to secure. The hours that followed would be critical in determining the outcome of their efforts. Together, they faced the challenges of the battle, their unity and determination serving as a beacon of hope in the midst of chaos. The counterattack was more than a military operation. It was a testament to their shared resolve and the enduring strength of their alliance. Chapter 46: An Emotional Struggle. The battle had raged on longer than Mara, Kael, and Elara had anticipated. What had initially seemed like a decisive confrontation had stretched into a prolonged struggle, with each passing day adding to the fatigue and uncertainty. The constant engagement with the enemy was taking its toll not only on their troops, but on the three leaders who were at the heart of the conflict. Each victory was tempered by mounting losses, and every strategic maneuver seemed to come with its own set of complications. The physical exhaustion of their forces was evident in the weariness etched on the faces of soldiers and in the strained efforts of their logistical teams. Supply lines were stretched thin, and the relentless pace of the fighting left little room for rest or recovery. The battlefield, once a place of clear objectives and hopeful outcomes, had become a grim landscape of attrition. This unrelenting cycle of combat and recovery wore heavily on Mara, Kael, and Elara, each of whom bore the weight of their decisions with increasing difficulty. For Mara, the burden of leadership was particularly heavy. Her role as the face of their efforts required her to project confidence and resolve, even when doubt gnawed at her. The constant strain of maintaining morale among the troops, coupled with the responsibility for high-stakes decisions, began to show in her demeanor. The emotional toll of seeing her plans and hopes for peace being tested in such a brutal way was beginning to manifest in her interactions with her allies. Kael, with his strategic mind, was equally affected. His focus on tactical success often masked the emotional toll it was taking on him. Each setback and unexpected complication in their plans weighed heavily on his shoulders. The pressure to constantly adapt and find new solutions was taking a mental toll, leading to moments of frustration and self-doubt. The strain of knowing that the stakes of their actions were so high only compounded his feelings of inadequacy and stress. Elara, known for her calm and thoughtful approach, was also feeling the effects of the prolonged conflict. Her role in managing diplomatic relations and offering counsel had become increasingly fraught with challenges. The emotional weight of seeing their alliances strained and their plans faltering took a toll on her usual composure. The constant need to maintain balance and provide reassurance was proving to be more challenging than she had anticipated. As the days wore on, the emotional strain on Mara, Kael, and Elara became more evident. Their interactions, once marked by mutual support and shared resolve, began to show signs of strain. The pressure of their circumstances led to heightened tensions and moments of friction between them. The stress of their roles and the unrelenting demands of the conflict made it increasingly difficult for them to communicate and collaborate as effectively as they once had. Despite their best efforts to remain united, the relentless pressure began to erode the bonds that had once held them together. The weight of their leadership responsibilities and the emotional toll of the ongoing battle started to create rifts. Each leader struggled with their own doubts and fears, and the collective resolve that had seen them through previous challenges was now being tested in ways they had not anticipated. The strain was evident in the exhaustion that marked their conversations and the short tempers that flared during moments of high stress. The camaraderie that had been a source of strength now seemed overshadowed by the emotional toll of their situation. The realization that their unity was being tested added another layer of pressure, making it clear that they needed to address these internal struggles if they hoped to overcome the external challenges they faced. As the days stretched into weeks, the relentless grind of the conflict began to wear heavily on Mara, Kael, and Elara. The long hours and constant uncertainty were more than just physically draining, they were emotionally exhausting. Each day seemed to bring new challenges and setbacks, compounding the stress and fatigue that had begun to seep into every aspect of their lives. The prolonged nature of the struggle, once thought to be a temporary burden, was evolving into a persistent strain that tested their endurance. For Mara, the isolation became increasingly palpable. Her role as the leader required her to project unwavering confidence and strength, but the mounting casualties and ongoing setbacks were eroding her resolve. She found herself grappling with her own fears and doubts, a stark contrast to the fortitude she was expected to display. The weight of responsibility, combined with the emotional toll of watching her plans and dreams for peace falter, left her feeling more alone than ever before. The challenge of keeping morale high among their troops was a constant strain. Mara understood the importance of maintaining a hopeful and resilient front, but the gap between her public persona and private anxieties was widening. The facade of confidence she projected to her forces and allies increasingly felt like a heavy mask that she struggled to keep in place. The pressure to inspire and lead in the face of adversity was taking a toll on her mental and emotional well-being. Her interactions with Kale and Alara, which had once been a source of mutual support and strength, now seemed tinged with tension. The shared sense of purpose that had united them was being overshadowed by underlying anxieties and unspoken frustrations. The constant stress and pressure had begun to strain their communication, making it difficult for them to connect on the same level they once had. Conversations that were once collaborative and encouraging had become fraught with unvoiced fears and lingering doubts. The sense of isolation Mara felt was not merely a product of her own internal struggles but also a reflection of the growing rift between the trio. As the demands of the conflict intensified, their individual approaches to handling the crisis were beginning to diverge. The alignment that had once marked their strategic and emotional interactions was giving way to a more fragmented dynamic. The strain of managing their different perspectives and expectations added another layer of complexity to their already fraught situation. The increasing tension was palpable during their meetings and discussions. What had been moments of shared resolve and determination were now clouded by unspoken grievances and a growing sense of disconnection. The exhaustion and stress had a way of amplifying their differences, leading to more frequent and intense disagreements. The emotional and strategic discord between them highlighted the extent to which their unity was being tested by the prolonged conflict. Mara's growing sense of isolation was further compounded by her inability to fully address her own fears and insecurities. The emotional burden of leadership was becoming overwhelming, and the gap between her personal struggles and her public duties was widening. The constant demand to lead with unwavering strength while facing her own doubts was pushing her to her limits. The challenge of reconciling her personal anxieties with her responsibilities as a leader was becoming increasingly difficult. In the midst of the mounting pressure and emotional strain, the need for reconnection and mutual support became more critical. The trio faced the daunting task of not only navigating the external challenges of the conflict, but also addressing the internal rifts that threatened their effectiveness. The realization that their unity was being tested in new and profound ways underscored the importance of finding common ground and reaffirming their shared commitment to their cause. Kale, too, was feeling the strain of the ongoing conflict. His role required him to make critical strategic calculations, and while these decisions were essential to their efforts, they had not always yielded the success he had hoped for. Each failed offensive, each unforeseen complication, seemed to compound the pressure he felt. The weight of these setbacks was beginning to affect him more deeply than he had anticipated. The relentless nature of the conflict made it increasingly difficult for him to maintain the composure he was known for. Every time a strategy failed or an expected outcome was thwarted, it was as if the burden of the failure rested squarely on his shoulders. Kale's normally meticulous planning seemed to be met with continuous obstacles, creating a cycle of frustration and self-doubt. He found himself replaying every decision, every miscalculation, and every misstep in his mind, wondering where things had gone wrong. This constant self-evaluation added to his emotional strain, making it harder for him to remain the steady, strategic force he had always been. The pressure to adapt and overcome in the face of mounting challenges was taking a significant toll on Cale. His ability to pivot and find new solutions was being tested to its limits, and the constant need to reassess and revise plans was wearing him thin. Each new complication seemed to increase the stakes, and the fear that their collective efforts might not be sufficient to achieve their goals was a constant, gnawing worry. This fear was compounded by the knowledge that the success of their mission and the stability of their kingdoms hinged on his ability to navigate these turbulent waters. The emotional burden of potentially failing their mission added another layer of stress to Cale's already strained state of mind. The weight of knowing that their actions, or lack thereof, could have far-reaching consequences for their people and their allies was almost too much to bear. This realization was a stark contrast to his usual calm demeanor, which had been his cornerstone throughout the conflict. The fear of failing those who depended on him was beginning to erode the resolve he had so carefully cultivated. Cale's internal struggle was not just a personal issue but had begun to affect his interactions with Mara and Elara. The tension from his own frustrations and fears seeped into their collaborative efforts, creating additional friction. Where he had once been a source of strategic clarity and reassurance, his recent struggles had made him less effective in these roles. The emotional strain was affecting his ability to contribute constructively to their planning sessions, adding to the overall sense of discord among the trio. The continuous cycle of high-stakes decision-making and strategic recalibration was taking its toll on Cale's mental and emotional well-being. His usual analytical mindset was clouded by the constant pressure and the mounting sense of urgency. This shift in his approach and demeanor was becoming increasingly evident to his colleagues, further compounding the sense of unease within their group. The emotional burden of the ongoing conflict was pushing Cale to the brink, challenging his ability to remain a steadfast leader. In moments of quiet reflection, Cale found himself questioning not only the effectiveness of his strategies, but also his own capacity to lead effectively. The fear of failing his mission, and by extension, failing those who looked to him for guidance, was a heavy emotional weight. This internal conflict was making it increasingly difficult for him to maintain the outward calm and confidence that had once defined his leadership style. The stakes were high, and the pressure was relentless, leading him to confront the limits of his resilience. The need for a renewed sense of connection and mutual support among Mara, Cale, and Elara became increasingly apparent. Each member of the trio was grappling with their own set of emotional and strategic challenges, and these individual struggles were starting to affect their collective efforts. The realization that they needed to address not only the external threats but also the internal discord within their group highlighted the importance of finding ways to strengthen their bond and refocus their shared mission. Elara, who had always been the mediator and source of wisdom among the trio, was not immune to the strain of the prolonged conflict. Her role had been to navigate the complex web of diplomatic relations and offer counsel, a responsibility that had become increasingly taxing as the conflict dragged on. The emotional weight of watching their carefully laid plans and fragile alliances strain under relentless pressure was beginning to affect her ability to provide the steady guidance she was known for. Each failed initiative and escalating tension seemed to chip away at her usual calm and poise. The constant barrage of problems and the increasing complexity of the situation were beginning to take a visible toll on Elara. Her interactions with Mara and Cale, once marked by a serene and balanced approach, now occasionally revealed signs of frustration and exhaustion. The stress of her role was evident in her demeanor. The patience she had once effortlessly maintained was now harder to come by. This shift was unsettling, as it contrasted sharply with the composed and insightful presence she had consistently offered in the past. Elara's ability to mediate effectively was being tested as the stakes of the conflict continued to rise. The pressures of maintaining diplomatic relations while addressing the internal strain within their group were overwhelming. She found herself struggling to balance her role as a counselor with the need to manage her own emotional responses. The constant need to reassure and guide her allies, while also dealing with her own mounting concerns, was beginning to erode her previously unwavering stability. The increasing tension in her interactions with Mara and Kale was a clear indicator of how deeply the conflict was affecting her. Where she had once been a source of calm and rationality, she now grappled with moments of short temper and visible fatigue. The emotional and psychological strain of the ongoing battle was seeping into her professional conduct, making it challenging for her to maintain the supportive and unflappable role that had been crucial to their efforts. Elara's internal struggle was compounded by the realization that the pressure was not just affecting her but also impacting the dynamics within the trio. The strain of the conflict was creating rifts where there had previously been cohesion. Her once reliable guidance was now tinged with a sense of weariness, and this shift in her demeanor was affecting the overall morale and effectiveness of their strategic efforts. The sense of frustration she felt was palpable, and it was beginning to undermine the sense of unity they had worked so hard to build. Despite her efforts to manage her stress and remain a pillar of strength, Elara found herself increasingly overwhelmed by the emotional weight of the situation. The demands of her role, combined with the relentless pressure of the conflict, were pushing her to her limits. The burden of maintaining diplomatic relationships while also coping with her own sense of fatigue was a formidable challenge, and it was beginning to show in her interactions with her colleagues. The need for Elara to regain her composure and find a renewed sense of balance was becoming crucial. Her role as a mediator and advisor was essential to their collective success, and the strain she was experiencing highlighted the need for internal support and understanding among the trio. Addressing the emotional impact of the conflict on each member of the team was vital to restoring their effectiveness and cohesion. The realization that their individual struggles were affecting their group dynamic underscored the importance of finding ways to support one another amidst the ongoing challenges. Elara's struggle to manage her emotional and professional responsibilities was a stark reminder of the personal toll that leadership during a prolonged conflict could take. The impact on her well-being was evident, and it was clear that finding a path to resilience and renewed strength would be critical to their continued success. As the trio navigated the complexities of their situation, the need for mutual support and understanding became increasingly apparent, highlighting the importance of addressing both the external threats and the internal challenges they faced. One evening, after another grueling day on the front lines, the trio gathered in their temporary headquarters. The room, dimly lit and cluttered with maps and reports, felt suffocating. The once energetic atmosphere was now laden with the exhaustion and strain that had accumulated over weeks of relentless conflict. The walls seemed to close in on them, amplifying the weight of their shared struggle. The space, designed to be a strategic haven, now felt like a trap of their own making, as the burden of their responsibilities pressed down on them. Mara, her face etched with fatigue, took a deep breath as she attempted to speak about their next steps. The exhaustion was apparent in the dark circles under her eyes and the weariness in her voice. She fumbled with the papers in front of her, her usual confidence undermined by the emotional toll of the conflict. Her gaze frequently darted between Kale and Elara, seeking their support but also struggling to mask her own doubts and fears. The pressure to maintain morale while dealing with personal fatigue was becoming increasingly challenging. As she glanced at her two closest allies, the emotional toll of the conflict became even more apparent. Mara's voice faltered as she spoke, her words betraying the strain she was under. The usual camaraderie and shared resolve seemed overshadowed by the individual burdens they each carried. The weight of the responsibility for their kingdoms, combined with the personal exhaustion, was beginning to fray the edges of their once unshakable unity. Her attempt to lead through the crisis was marked by a palpable sense of vulnerability. Cale, seated across from Mara, appeared lost in thought, his normally sharp focus now clouded by the strain of the prolonged battle. His brow was furrowed, and his hands gripped the edge of the table with a tension that mirrored the fatigue etched across his face. The strategic challenges and the repeated setbacks had begun to take a toll on him, and the stress was evident in his demeanor. The burden of ensuring their plans succeeded while facing constant adversity was beginning to weigh heavily on him. Elara, typically the source of wisdom and stability, sat silently, her usually composed demeanor showing signs of strain. Her eyes, which once reflected calm and insight, now revealed a depth of weariness that was hard to conceal. The constant pressure to maintain diplomatic relations and provide guidance while dealing with her own emotional exhaustion was affecting her ability to contribute effectively. The silence in the room was punctuated by her occasional, weary sighs, signaling her internal struggle. The atmosphere in the room was thick with unspoken tension, each of them grappling with their personal battles. The emotional strain was not only impacting their interactions but also their effectiveness as a team. The room felt like a pressure cooker, with each member of the trio struggling to keep their emotions in check while continuing to push forward. The challenges of the conflict had made their collaboration more difficult, and the weight of their shared struggle was palpable. Despite their individual struggles, they each knew the importance of maintaining their unity. The situation demanded that they support each other, even as they faced their own doubts and fears. Mara, Cale, and Elara were acutely aware of the need to navigate their personal challenges while staying focused on their mission. The room, though dim and cluttered, was a symbol of their ongoing battle, not just against external threats but also against the emotional toll of their leadership. As the evening wore on, the trio remained in the dimly lit room, their silence speaking volumes. The struggle to balance their emotional well-being with their leadership responsibilities was becoming increasingly apparent. They knew that their ability to face the challenges ahead depended not only on their strategic planning but also on their ability to support each other through the emotional hardships they were enduring. The weight of their shared struggle was a reminder of the fragility of their alliance and the importance of finding strength in their unity. Cale, sensing the shift in mood and the growing distance between them, finally broke the heavy silence. His voice, typically filled with strategic certainty, now carried an uncharacteristic note of vulnerability. "We need to address what's happening between us," he began, his gaze steady but troubled. "The strain of this conflict is starting to affect our decisions and our trust in each other. I can feel it, and I'm sure you both can too." His words cut through the oppressive atmosphere, laying bare the emotional toll that the prolonged battle had taken on their relationship. The room fell into an even deeper silence as Cale's admission settled over them. It was a moment of raw honesty that none of them had fully confronted until now. Mara and Elara exchanged glances, their own struggles reflected in Cale's words. The weight of their individual burdens had created a chasm that was now threatening to undermine their collective strength. Cale's acknowledgement of their strained interactions was a crucial step toward addressing the fractures in their alliance, even if it was uncomfortable. Mara, who had been struggling with her own feelings of isolation and doubt, looked at Cale with a mixture of relief and sorrow. "You're right," she said softly, her voice cracking slightly. "We've been so focused on the external threats that we've neglected the impact this is having on us as a team. I've been feeling increasingly alone in this, and I know it's affecting how we work together." Her admission was a testament to the personal toll the conflict had taken on her, as well as her recognition of the need to address their internal issues. Elara, ever the mediator, took a deep breath before speaking. Her role had always been to provide balance and perspective, but even she was struggling to maintain her composure. "We've all been under immense pressure," she said, her voice steady but tinged with fatigue. "It's understandable that we're feeling the strain, but we need to remember why we're here and what we're fighting for. We can't let this divide us further." Her words were an attempt to refocus their energies on their shared goals and the unity that had once been their strength. As they listened to each other's admissions, the trio began to realize that their emotional struggles were not just personal but were affecting their strategic effectiveness. The stress and exhaustion had created a rift that was impacting their decision-making and their ability to function as a cohesive unit. Each member of the trio was beginning to understand that addressing their personal issues was as critical as tackling the external threats they faced. The acknowledgement of their strained relationships was a pivotal moment for the trio. It opened the door to a more honest and empathetic dialogue about their feelings and challenges. They began to talk more openly about their fears, frustrations, and the pressure they were under. This newfound transparency was uncomfortable but necessary for rebuilding their trust and solidarity. Despite the difficulties, there was a palpable sense of relief as they confronted their issues together. The conversation marked the beginning of a renewed effort to support each other, not just as allies in a battle but as friends facing a shared crisis. They understood that their strength as a team depended on their ability to address both their personal struggles and their collective goals. By the end of the evening, the trio had begun to reforge the bonds that had been strained by the conflict. Their discussion was a small but significant step toward healing the fractures in their relationship. As they prepared to face the ongoing challenges, they knew that their renewed commitment to each other would be crucial in overcoming the obstacles ahead. The emotional struggle was far from over, but the act of confronting it together marked a turning point in their journey. Elara nodded, her expression etched with deep concern as she took in the gravity of the situation. "We've been so focused on the immediate challenges that we've neglected how this is impacting us personally," she said, her voice carrying a weight of realization. The emotional and psychological toll of their prolonged struggle had been overlooked in their relentless pursuit of victory. Elara's words were a poignant reminder that, beyond the strategic decisions and battlefield tactics, the personal cost of their leadership was becoming increasingly apparent. Her gaze shifted between Mara and Kale, both of whom had been visibly strained by the ongoing conflict. "It's important that we acknowledge this and find a way to support each other, not just as leaders but as friends who are sharing this burden," she continued. The plea for reconnection was a heartfelt attempt to bridge the growing chasm between them. Elara's concern was not just about the tactical aspects of their mission but also about the emotional well-being of her closest allies. The strain of their roles had begun to erode the bonds that had once united them. Elara's plea for mutual support was underscored by the visible exhaustion and tension that had come to define their interactions. The room, filled with the remnants of their intense strategizing and planning, now seemed to amplify the personal and emotional distance that had developed. Each of them had been operating in isolation, focusing on their individual responsibilities without fully recognizing the impact of their collective stress on their relationship. Elara's call for empathy and support was a crucial step in mending their fractured connection. As Mara listened, she felt a flicker of hope amidst the overwhelming fatigue. Elara's words resonated with her, highlighting the need for a supportive network within their trio. Mara had been wrestling with feelings of loneliness and self-doubt, and Elara's reminder of their shared humanity was both comforting and sobering. The realization that they had been neglecting their personal connections in favor of focusing solely on their strategic goals made her reflect on the importance of their friendship in navigating the crisis. Kale, too, was affected by Elara's heartfelt plea. The pressure of maintaining a strategic advantage while dealing with the emotional toll had left him feeling increasingly isolated. Elara's emphasis on the need for mutual support echoed his own growing sense of vulnerability. Her acknowledgement of their shared burden was a crucial validation of the emotional strain they had all been experiencing. It was a moment of recognition that their individual struggles were intertwined with their collective mission. Elara's words sparked a renewed sense of determination in the trio to address their personal and emotional challenges. They began to understand that their effectiveness as leaders depended not only on their strategic prowess but also on their ability to support and uplift each other. The realization that their emotional well-being was integral to their mission's success was a turning point, signaling a shift from individual isolation to collective resilience. In the days that followed, Mara, Kale, and Elara made a concerted effort to reconnect and support each other more openly. Their conversations, once dominated by strategic discussions, began to include more personal reflections and expressions of mutual support. They recognized that their strength as a team lay not only in their tactical decisions but also in their ability to lean on each other through the emotional turbulence of their shared experience. Elara's call for reconnection had set the stage for a deeper, more empathetic collaboration. The trio's renewed focus on their personal bonds provided a foundation of support that was essential for facing the ongoing challenges. While the road ahead remained fraught with uncertainty, their strengthened connection and mutual understanding offered a glimmer of hope that they could navigate the crisis together, not just as leaders but as a united team. The moment of doubt and vulnerability provided an unexpected opportunity for honest conversation among Mara, Kale, and Elara. As they sat together in the dimly lit room, the weight of their shared struggles seemed to lift, if only slightly, as they began to speak openly about their individual experiences. Each of them took turns voicing their fears, frustrations, and the emotional toll the ongoing conflict had taken on them. It was a cathartic moment, allowing them to confront not only the external challenges they faced but also the internal battles that had been quietly wearing them down. Mara spoke first, her voice tinged with exhaustion and sorrow. She admitted to feeling overwhelmed by the relentless pressure of leadership, her usual confidence shaken by the mounting casualties and the seemingly endless stream of setbacks. Her vulnerability in sharing these feelings was a stark contrast to the strong, unyielding leader her allies had come to rely on. This revelation opened a channel for deeper understanding, allowing Kale and Elara to see the human side of their leader that had been obscured by the demands of their roles. Kale followed, his strategic mind revealing a different facet of the struggle. He spoke of the weight of responsibility that accompanied each failed offensive or unexpected complication. The pressure to continuously adapt and overcome had begun to erode his calm demeanor, leaving him to grapple with the fear that their efforts might ultimately fall short. His admission of doubt and fear was a candid reflection of the emotional burden he had been shouldering, adding a layer of depth to the challenges they faced together. Elara, always the mediator and source of wisdom, shared her own struggles with maintaining diplomatic relations and providing counsel amidst the growing strain. The emotional weight of witnessing their plans and alliances strain under pressure had begun to affect her ability to offer the steady guidance she was known for. Her frustration and exhaustion were evident as she spoke, revealing the personal cost of her role in the conflict. This moment of honesty highlighted the shared burden they all carried, despite their different responsibilities. The discussion, while painful, became a crucial turning point for the trio. It served as a powerful reminder of their shared humanity and the importance of mutual support. As they spoke, they began to understand that their emotional well-being was just as critical as their strategic decisions. The realization that they were not alone in their struggles brought a sense of solidarity that had been missing amidst the chaos and pressure of their roles. Despite the strain and uncertainty that continued to loom over them, their renewed understanding and empathy for each other became a vital component in navigating the ongoing conflict. The conversation allowed them to reconnect on a personal level, fostering a sense of unity that strengthened their resolve. They recognized that their effectiveness as leaders depended not only on their individual skills but also on their ability to support and uplift each other through the toughest times. In the aftermath of their heartfelt discussion, Mara, Kale, and Alara made a concerted effort to integrate their newfound understanding into their daily interactions. Their conversations began to include more personal reflections, and they made time to check in on each other's well-being amidst their busy schedules. This renewed focus on mutual support and empathy provided a foundation of strength that was crucial for facing the ongoing challenges. As they moved forward, the emotional connection forged during this turning point played a significant role in their ability to tackle the conflict. Their collective resolve, strengthened by their shared vulnerabilities and mutual support, became a source of resilience. While the path ahead remained uncertain, their strengthened bonds offered a glimmer of hope that they could navigate the crisis together, not just as leaders but as a unified team.